Welcome everybody into the final regular season edition for 2025 of Warm Weather Fans, the Sunbelt Podcast. My name is Brian Stone, joined again this week by Zeke Palermo as we will run down all of the Week 14 action that we saw on Saturday. Zeke, we've also had a coaching change that we're going to talk over once we sort of wrap up here, or maybe we could talk about it off the top. It's up to you, but other than that, how's it going?
It's good, man. It had a good holiday. It was a really exciting week of college football. A lot of interesting games, a lot of movement. The Lane Kiffin saga was fun to follow. He is exactly who we all knew he was 10 years ago. And so it's awesome that he was pretending that wasn't the case. But we had some good games. As you talked about a coaching change, we'll just go ahead, I guess, dive into it. As we record this Sunday night, Coastal Carolina announced that they fired head coach Tim Beck after 3 seasons. Coastal finished 6-6 this year. I'm a little underprepared. I don't have it pulled up. I don't know what that brings Beck to all time at Coastal. But from a very high level,
I will pull it up for you.
Sweet. So, but just kind of to kick off the conversation about it from a very high level, this was not terribly surprising that this was the outcome. I know, Brian, you were very underwhelmed by the hire when it happened. They were replacing Jimmy Chadwell, who had done some really incredible things at Coastal. Beck comes in. He gets like half a year, maybe 6 games out of a injured Grayson McCall. And then after that, just kind of flops. There's not a ton great to speak of. The offense was unimaginative, which is frustrating when you look at Tim Beck being an offensive guy. The defenses were never anything to really, really write home about. I don't want to say that this was necessarily like a failure of a tenure from Tim Beck, but this was probably the ending that it was always going to have, was a premature firing. They weren't going to let it play it out. He probably wasn't going to get another job elsewhere. I don't know. I've felt very strongly that I think Coastal is one of the few brands in the Sun Belt that demands success from a program perspective, but also from like a national profile standpoint. Especially because of those Jamie Chadwell, Grayson McCall years, and the surf turf, and then Tim Beck going on the beach with the cheerleaders without his shirt on. Like, it's one of the brands that supersedes the conference and kind of flirts with national media to some degree. And so the expectations are higher and simply weren't met.
Tim Beck was 20-18 at Coastal Carolina overall through 3 seasons, and was 13-11 in Sunbelt play. You mentioned it. I think the thing that killed him the most was not being able to identify a quarterback as an offensive guy. I had a tweet that went viral. I want to throw that out there, but I'm throwing it out there for a reason. I started attracting everybody who it became one of those bug zappers where the bugs just see the light and they fly straight into it. I was not basically talking to anyone outside of my own fan base. So it was weird that everybody got like latched onto this, but there was a moron in my mentions who was arguing with me about the difference between Southern and Coastal, because we find ourselves as programs on very similar grounds as far as like, there's a coach that, is on thin ice, theoretically, is barely keeping his head above 500 on a yearly basis, has turned in multiple 6-win seasons. All of these things applied to both Georgia Southern and Coastal. And this guy was like, well, you got to understand Coastal. And this guy's a Southern fan, by the way. Acts like I have no idea what's going on at Coastal. He's like, you got to understand, with Chadwell, they were a 10-win team, but with Beck, they weren't. And I was like, do you understand that McCall played there a half a year when he came in and they won 8 games? He won 8 games off the rip. So yes, it was bad after, but you can't look after year 1 and go, oh, this was an obvious, like, we got to fire this guy. I got on the, like, I never liked NC State's offense when I watched them. Like back when he was the offensive coordinator, I was like, this is unimaginative as it gets. It's strict spread. There's nothing in here. And they mixed it up some when Samari Collier this year got uncovered. But like even going back to McCall, they were winning games off of literally the talent that their quarterback had, which was he was the best quarterback in the conference in 2023. That rising tide lifts all boats in that situation. You can be an iffy offensive play caller, and if you have the best quarterback in the conference, it'll make you look like passable. Now, I was totally off the train last year in 2024 watching Ethan Vasco and Noah Kim and a little bit of Tad Hudson. You know, shout out to his uncle. He's been showing us love on social media. I was totally off the train with Beck at that point because I'm like, if you're an offensive guy and you don't know what good quarterback play looks like, that's concerning to me. And again, same goes for Helton at Southern. Like, has had a lot of trouble like identifying a good quarterback to put you in like the top 5 quarterbacks in the conference. I would say he hasn't done that in his entire time there. And this year, you know, you follow it up, you go 6-6. We tweeted it out because again, Tad Hudson's uncle was showing us so much love that Tad Hudson, the games that he played, Coastal was like 1-5, and the games that Samari Collier played, they were 5-1. And they changed the offense obviously to more of like a heavy power run type team, you know, like think Georgia Tech, Buster Faulkner's offense over there in Atlanta with Haynes King. That's what they were doing with Samari Collier, and that worked. But the second Collier hurt his leg in the Coastal game, it obviously just went off of a cliff. So, like you said, I was pretty uninspired when it happened. I thought there were reasons for optimism after year one because winning 8 games in your first season when you've got that level of like turnover from Chadwell to Beck is significant and can't be like really understated. But it just all came off the tracks after McCall transferred to NC State. Ironically, he goes to NC State, Beck comes from NC State, and then they just kind of pass each other for like half of a football season. And, you know, it just didn't work. Like you could tell the non-Samari Collier plays just weren't firing. And like that was all of 2024. They could not score points. They couldn't sustain drives. This year, same thing. If Samari Collier wasn't their quarterback, which was literally half the season, their quarterback play, their offense was atrocious. They couldn't do anything that really scared you. They didn't have any playmakers, it felt like, on the offensive side of the ball, which was supposed to be his forte. They didn't really have any receivers I was scared of. Their running backs left a lot to be desired. Their offensive line was like fine because obviously they were good when Collier played, but they were more of built toward the run rather than throwing the ball. I'm not shocked. I mean, this is what happens when, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, a program actually decides to hold its head coach like accountable and says, hey, winning 6 games every season is not acceptable. Can't say that for every program in the Sun Belt, which is some seem totally fine to let their head coach just win 6 games every year. So,
yeah, like we said, this isn't a terrible shock. I think from Coastal, the onus is on them though, to make a bit. They need to make a good hire here. That's really the biggest step for them. And I don't know where. I guess I don't know the history. Where did Chadwell come from? What was his history before coming to Coastal?
Chadwell was an FCS head coach at Charleston Southern, which was a very small, like even program by FCS standards. Like if they dropped down to D2, I don't think anybody would really blink. But he had them winning games over the course of seasons that frankly they had like no business winning. But the scheme was just so, I mean, you saw it like when McCall ran it was like a thing of beauty to watch this like spread option concept mixed with a quarterback that could do both and run the ball and throw. And that's why I was just like, it's not a good fit with Beck coming in because it's just strictly spread where it's like drop back, out of the shotgun, stand there for 3 seconds, hit a check down. We keep moving the sticks that way, or we run inside zone. It was like nothing that really shocked me. From what I saw, this was how the Beck hire went down. So Chadwell leaves, goes to Liberty. He might be out at Liberty sooner than later. I've already heard rumblings that Liberty fans are tired of him because of how this year ended up. So Joe Moglia, who I need to check, is he there still? No, I don't think he's the AD anymore. He's something called the chair of the athletics division. Does that make you the AD?
I could not tell you. I could not tell you what that makes you.
I'm just asking. So I read a tweet thread from a reporter who covers Coastal, and this is what he said. Basically, Chadwell left, and Moglia came out and hired Beck after doing very little of a search. Was just kind of like, hey, I've got 5 guys that are on this list that I've made that I'm interested in as candidates. Let me like reach out to them and see what gauge their interest. And Beck came back and was like, yeah, I'm willing to come be the head coach. And so this guy, I was reading his tweet, said that he asked Mowgli at a press conference. He's like, what do you mean you didn't do a search? You just made a list of 5 guys like while the season was wrapping up? And Mowgli, for lack of better terms, was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I made a list of 5 guys that I thought we could get and I was interested in, and they came over. And I just hired the one that basically seemed like a good fit and would agree to sign with us. So that's not a good way to do business. I think they have someone else in charge of the hiring this time around, so they don't really have to worry about that. But yeah, just lazy hire. I kind of low key in the preseason kind of started feeling the same way the more we talked about Dowell Loggins at App, where I was trying to make the parallels. I'm like, he's an offensive guy from a school in the Carolinas that's going to another school in the Carolinas. They're putting so much weight on recruiting footprint and like all this other stuff, continuity. He's been in the Carolinas. He knows these people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the thing that you are not in Beck's case, it was the scheme and it was just uninspired. And then in Logan's case, I was like, do you get Lenoris Sellers? No. Okay. Well, then what does the team look like if you don't have Lenoris Sellers running that offense? And you see, it kind of has not worked out for South Carolina or App this year with the way that all shook. So,
yeah. Before we move on from this, I think just kind of want to get a heat check on the other coaches in the conference. There are 3 coaches that I think could get moved on from this or let me rephrase, should get moved off from this season. Maybe 4. Those being Major Applewhite at South Alabama. They'll probably give him a 3rd year. This is only year 2, and kind of like Tim Beck, on paper, record-wise, has had 2 solid seasons. But if you watch the product on the field, especially post Gio Lopez and with Bishop Davenport, it's the same thing as Tim Beck, where it's just like you had a good quarterback and now you don't, and it's pretty obvious. Del McGee, I'm hearing that he's probably getting another year at Georgia State, which is crazy, having won 1 conference game in 2 years. That's awesome. And then there's 2 guys who probably aren't going anywhere for a little while, but I think I know I would like to see the teams move on from. That's Clay Helton, obviously, and we know what's going on there. Just costs the school way too much to fire him, but maybe that's not true. So who knows? And then Butch Jones, who is kind of in a similar position of Tim Beck, also in that, again, on paper, he's getting to bowl games, they're winning games, but Arkansas State, as you've talked about, should have a little higher standard than what they're getting out of them. Is there anyone else, I guess, from your perspective, that needs to be looked at maybe this offseason? Someone that might go into 2026 with like an ultimatum?
Well, I mean, heading into 26, probably Dowell Loggins if the shenanigans on the sideline and everything keep up. He misses a bowl game this season, and we'll talk about the Arkansas State game, that the way that ended up. I mean, you kind of listed it. It's like the only other guy I can think of other than Applewhites and McGee are the two big ones where it's like they should have been gone probably already. That should have been announced today. But just with the weird stuff going on around the program is maybe Bryant Vincent at ULM. But he's the AD. So what's he going to do?
Actually, I think they just hired. I think they just got today an official athletic director.
Okay.
Which could see that movement. Maybe he wants to bring in his own guy.
I think they need to either decide whether they're willing to sink the money into athletics or they're not interested. And I think you need to let him know, because I think if you put him in a competent program with like the requisite funds, I think he could field a pretty good team. But like, what are you supposed to do at ULM? Like, how are you supposed to compete in the NIL era? I don't know. So I don't blame him either. Like, I think he was just kind of dealt like a raw hand and now is just trying to make the best of it, but they can't get a quarterback in there seemingly.
Okay, so get this. The new athletic director at ULM is one S.J. Towie.
Sure.
The brother from The Blind Side.
Oh, Tui. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tui. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Sure, man.
Funny how those things work.
I'd be like, can I meet Sandra Bullock? You got any ins with Sandra Bullock? All right. Do you want to get cracking on these
Week
14 games, since we ran down the kind of the coaching situation of a lot of these teams, and it's either like you should want better for yourself with a lot of these teams, or like a lot of these guys are kind of early in their tenure or they had good seasons, so it's kind of a moot point. But I am surprised that the idea that and this was my tweet, but like Beck goes 6-6 this year, and Coastal's like, we can do better than this. And then a lot of other programs are watching their coaches go 6-6 and are like, yay, we made a bowl game. Yay. And I'm like, why are we treating this as like it's an 8-year-old's birthday party and like they just hit the piñata? Like, I don't understand it. Like, what? Have higher standards for you. Have some self-respect. Like, what are you doing?
And I think some programs in the conference, you can say that about. Southern, Arkansas State, are kind of the two that are struggling. App State are kind of the schools but there are schools that are like South Alabama, ULM, Georgia State. Those are programs where, you know what, if you're celebrating the bowl win, it's okay. But if you're right.
If you're Georgia State and you have one conference win in 2 seasons, like what are you celebrating in theory right there?
That doesn't meet the bar at all. But like with the Major Applewhite situation, I think he has a little more leeway in terms of just kind of like comparative success as compared to like Kane Womack, and it's a very young program. So
yeah. All right. So first game on Saturday was mine. It was Georgia Southern beats Marshall 24-19. Marshall's defense did not look like they wanted to play another game after this one. They straight up mailed in the effort. I thought it was I don't want to say it was like disgusting, but the fact that Gibson's supposed to be this like defensive guy and they came in and let JC French shred them was not a sign of like great, we did a great job of defensive game planning this week. The whole team kind of seemed like, at least until Zion Turner came in and got those minutes, I was like, is Marshall for real right now? What are we doing? I felt like I saw no effort from them on Saturday, and I was really shocked, because I was like, here's what Georgia Southern's going to do coming off of a big loss to at home to Old Dominion. They're going to mail it in. They're going to be ready for the season to be over, like all that stuff. And shockingly, it was Marshall who did that, where you know, what was his name? Adrian Norton came to play. Zion Turner came to play. They had some guys that showed up and actually like tried to make it an effort. But like a lot of these guys, it's like, think about this. Okay, so Joshawn Barbie has been kind of their lead back this season, right? For Marshall. Against the third worst rushing defense in the conference, who, by the way, just fired their defensive coordinator an hour ago. So that should let you know where we are as a program. He ran for 8 yards on 7 carries.
That's what surprised me most about this game, and I understand from like a game planning perspective. You leave the first quarter down 11 points, you go into half down 9, was it? It was 14-6, so you were
8.
Yeah, or 8 rather. Duh. So I get why you would move away from the pass, but it's like they showed ULM levels of incompetence in playing behind, in that they abandoned the run entirely. As a team, Marshall ran the ball 16 times for 64 yards. 16 times. I didn't know that was possible.
Especially against Georgia Southern's defense.
Which is, yes, categorically one of the worst in the country. It will now forever look a lot better than it did this year, because they get to finish with only 64 yards on the ground in this final game. From a per rush perspective, it wasn't like the defense was doing great. 4 per carry for Marshall. That's what really perplexed me most about this game, is just the decision to go that way. And again, the game script kind of plays itself to a pass heavy, but 16 feels obscenely low.
They got behind, like you said, and just totally abandoned it. It felt like Georgia Southern did what they did against Coastal in that once Tad Hudson came in, they were just like, yeah, we're not scared of you guys running the football. What are you gonna do? You want you gonna let Tad Hudson turn it loose? No. And that was kind of the way it was with Carlos Del Rio Wilson in this one, who was not good. 9 of 16, completed 56% of his passes, 136 yards, and threw a pick. I don't know, man. Like I know that Marshall fans in the preseason were like on us because they were like, we're just gonna keep it rolling. And we're gonna have no issues and not see any drop off from like the Huff Braylon Braxton team. This is ugly. Like I was just like, what are you guys doing? Because I was getting concerned that as a Southern fan, they were not going to fire their defensive coordinator because their defense was playing up to snuff in this game. Like I was getting afraid, like, oh no, they're going to go back and see it was 16 yards or whatever it was in the first half rushing. And I'm like, oh no, this is going to save his job just by virtue of this last game. But yeah, man, until Zion Turner came in, they couldn't move the ball at all. I mean, they had 6 first half points. Again, one of the worst defenses in the country, and you're struggling to move the football. Turner kind of led a comeback late. He threw like a 44-yard touchdown that I think pulled them within 5. I think they went for 2, didn't get it. So they were down 5, and Georgia Southern just never gave the ball back and just ran the clock out. I would want to say in theory that Southern ran the ball well, but they frankly didn't. OJ Arnold and David Bedinga, who were their top 2 running backs, were out for this game. So there was Teo Todd was the lead back. Bryce Baker was the other guy that mixed in. I don't even know that we got any Terrence Gibbs carries in this one, which was shocking for a game where we're down to our 3rd running back. And then Camden Brown played really well. He 9 catches on 16 targets. That's a insane number of targets. 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. The 3rd highest PFF receiving grade of anybody who had more than 3 targets this week. So he just tore him up.
Yeah, he's been exceptional this year. One of the few bright spots from the Georgia Southern perspective. He is likely out of eligibility, right? Because he did 3 years at Auburn before this.
He's done.
He was excellent this year. Maybe he probably the best receiver in the conference this year?
I mean, I would probably throw Ted Hurst in there.
Ted
too.
Hurst. Carl Chester was really good at Southern Miss. Bo Sparks, a guy who we didn't talk a lot at Texas State. Anyway, the point being a great season for him and a great way to finish his career.
From a production perspective, yeah, like he had it all. He got the targets, so he didn't have games where he just kind of fell off the face of the earth a lot of times, like unless they were just losing big and they pulled the starters. He got the targets. He was a red zone threat. He could win down the field. His route tree wasn't the most like robust that I saw of any receiver, but it was what he did extremely well. It was almost like watching a college version of like AJ Brown play, where it's like big physical guy, but he's going to run a lot of like sluggos, like slant and go stuff, or it's going to be a curl, or it's going to be a drag or something like that. It was not like a wide route tree. He wasn't running like slants and like outs and stuff like that. It was a lot of back shoulder fade stuff. He was great this year. Yeah, he has got to be the player that I have absolutely no beef with. Like I have not doubted his effort or his production once this season, and I cannot say that about any other Georgia Southern player. Truly, like I can't. When they needed a score, they could go to him in the red zone. He was a big, like I said, big physical X receiver. Yeah, it just sucks that he was like stranded on this team that is going nowhere other than Mobile for the bowl game. Like, sweet. On the other side of things, Marshall, I mentioned Norton had 8 catches for 160 and a touchdown. He played well. Again, these Marshall fans who were mad at us in the preseason that were like, we're gonna be right in the race for the Sun Belt title. No, you weren't. You won 5 games. You missed a bowl. You probably played the wrong quarterback all season, given how it ended with Del Rio Wilson and Zion Turner looking better in the last 2 games than Wilson did. I said this in the preseason, and one of the YouTube comments on our season preview for Marshall like killed me for this. I said, if you think this season's not going anywhere, like if 6-6 is your ceiling, it's not going anywhere. You need to start rotating younger guys in and getting them reps. And someone in the YouTube comments was like, what Brian suggested was heresy. We don't quit. We don't throw the towel in. And I'm like, there's a difference though between being an actual contender and putting a bunch of older guys out there who you think, hey, we can win 8-9 games, 7-8-9 games, and like be in the running at the end of the season for the title game. And being a 5-win team that's going nowhere fast other than, like I said, Mobile or wherever, Boca. And you played a bunch of older guys with no eligibility left or very little eligibility that don't have high ceilings. That to me is a mistake.
We didn't see that across the conference. No one, because there are 3 teams that I really think should have been doing that this year, and simply didn't. The first one, obviously, being Coastal Carolina, who stuck with Tad Hudson. We saw some MJ Morris, and then Samari Collier broke out, but then he broke his leg, and just ultimately may never play football again. So Coastal, ULM, there's obviously a deficiency of ability there. It's not, I don't think that they were running out Aiden Armenta because they thought that he could be that guy, but maybe because he was the only guy there. And then Georgia State, who we've talked about, was running with TJ Finley. We saw Christian Valaire. We were running the JMU2 quarterback thing for a while, before ultimately Cameron Brown ultimately won it, but then has missed the last couple of weeks. So from a conference perspective, we didn't see, at least at the quarterback position, teams that probably should have been leaning on other guys or experimenting with other guys. Because remember, this is how Charles Huff found Braylon Braxton. This is how
Old Dominion found Colton Joseph.
You go back to Louisiana. a handful of those. I mean, they've had like 4 or 5 good quarterbacks over the past 6, 7,
Yeah.
8 years. A lot of those guys, Jalen Rayner at Arkansas State, Zion Chris when he was at Louisiana is the one that comes to mind. So I don't know. I understand like this perspective, especially from an optics perspective. If you're a guy who, if you're Tim Beck, who may have had some heat coming into the season, or Bryant Vincent or Del McGee, guys who kind of did not have an uber secure job. I don't know. I think there's merit to the idea that you may not be in a position to be super creative or experimental with that option.
But can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just off the back of that,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't it be? Let me take Del McGee at Georgia State for an example, because he kind of found himself in a similar situation to what you talked about with Huff and Braxton and Ronnie and Joseph. Shouldn't it be your job to evaluate who actually is the best quarterback to put on the field, regardless of how old they are? Like, isn't that part of your job description to look at in practice and go, okay, here are the 3 guys that we have taken reps. We have TJ Finley, who's been kicking around at 9 different schools over the last decade. Okay, we know what we kind of have there. Like, the ceiling is ultimately not super, super high. Volaire, we saw what we had last year. Not great. It was not good. Like, there's no really way to spin it. Or we have this 3rd guy who's basically a mystery box because I think he's a freshman, right? Okay, we have this 3rd guy as a mystery box. We are not in line to win very much this year, if at all. Why don't we give this guy some reps, especially in practice, split starter reps between him and Finley, and then basically let them battle out for the job? Isn't it your job as a coach to determine who's the best quarterback to put out there? And if you're not, aren't you failing in your duties, kind of?
I don't think you're wrong, but I'm also not certain that it's that simple.
I think sometimes it is, and I think sometimes these guys just aren't as good of talent evaluators as we'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt for.
I mean, we'll find. I think the next couple years at Southern Miss, I think next year is Braxton's not a senior, is he?
I think so. He played like 2 years at Tulsa.
Whenever it is that Braylon Braxton, I'll pull it up. But whenever it is that Braylon Braxton, I think we'll kind of see what that blueprint looks like.
Well, and but here's the thing: the same thing goes for Gibson at Marshall. Shouldn't your offensive coordinator come to you and go, okay, listen, Carlos has not been good the last probably 4 weeks of the season. The best we're doing possibly is probably 6-6. We're not, the ceiling's not much higher than that. We're kind of lacking from a weapons perspective. The defense comes in and out, and it's like when they force turnovers, they're good. When they're not forcing turnovers, they're horrific. Maybe we throw Zion Turner out there, who I think is a sophomore or a junior. And just see like what we have in that quarterback spot and see if we can do something different. And for you as the coach to just go, no, we're just going to keep doing the same stuff and hope for different results. I think that's ridiculous, because that should be your thing, is like, we see what's not working and we don't just put our hands over our ears and pretend like we don't hear it. You know what I mean?
I think so, but I think because it's like, there's 2 possibilities that all of these guys don't recognize that as part of their job, or there's something else, right? Or there's just another angle to it. Because we've seen, I think Charles Huff is a great example. Even Chesney at James Madison, when they were flirting with Sluka for so long. You're seeing this at with Clay Helton and how he marries to quarterbacks. I think it's just more likely that it's just not that simple, even though it should be, and it really feels like it should be that easy.
Well, I think the important thing too, and you mentioned Helton being married to whatever quarterback is starting. You cannot put your emotions in front of, or personal relationships in front of, the success of the team. I'm sorry. Like, it's great if you think Davis Brin is a great kid and has never done anything wrong in his life and is an upstanding citizen. That's great. He can't throw the football worth a crap. So what do we do? Like, why are we wasting 12 games
Yeah.
pretending like he can?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It ain't high school. This isn't high school ball
right.
where you can give, turn the kid that hasn't played a snap all 4 years into a long snapper like that. It just isn't the case.
Right.
I don't know. I think these second rounds where these coaches, like we saw with Tim Beck, where you actually have to put the onus on them is like, all right, can you evaluate or can you find or can you develop, or are you riding the coattails of this one kid, Butch Jones with Jalen Raynor, another really great example, where we just don't know what he's like without a guy like Jalen Raynor, who's been a top 4 quarterback in the conference the past several years. I think that'll be really telling. It'll be telling for Huff. It'll be telling for Ronnie. It'll be telling for Chesney. It's already been telling for Helton.
Chesney might not be at JMU after this season's over, to be quite frank. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Tulane came and scooped him up after Summerall moved on.
I hope not, but there's a lot of smoke there.
So, we'll see how that all goes. The next game here, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. This was yours. I didn't watch a single snap of Georgia State Old Dominion. No offense. It was 0-0 after the first quarter, and I was just kind of sitting there going, Old Dominion, what are we doing? Christian Valaire's playing. They're not moving the ball overly well. Why are we kind of playing with our food here in Georgia State? It wasn't even in Turner Field, so you can't use the excuse of like it's just so dead there. There's no crowd energy. Like, we just couldn't get excited for this one. It's like it was at home to end the season. It was senior night. Like, what are we doing with this team right now?
Yeah, I think from a Georgia State perspective, actually, I'll go with the Old Dominion perspective first. This is the same complaint that we've had about one of several complaints we've had about Old Dominion. The primary being kind of their weapons options, which actually guys showed up. Devin Roche had a great game in this one, ran for over 100, ran really, really well. But it's a similar complaint to what we had with James Madison for early parts of the year, especially after that Washington State game, which was not the early parts of the year. That was like last week. But the point stands is like, if you're trying to differentiate yourself as not just a good G5 team, but push for obviously the conference championship, but also for those playoff spots, which James Madison is, Old Dominion is not. But there's a world where dice fell elsewhere, and Old Dominion was kind of in James Madison's shoes this year. And if you're trying to establish yourself in that realm of not just another G5 team, but rather like Cincinnati was a couple years ago in the American. I'm failing to come up with other examples, but Boise, right? When you're trying to set yourself up as one of those types of teams, you have to step on the neck. You have to step on the neck.
Mm-hmm.
And going down 10-0 to Georgia State at home is not stepping on the neck.
No,
this game was never in doubt. Something I don't think I've seen or have not seen often is ESPN's win probability. Georgia State goes up 10-0, and Old Dominion still has a 80% chance to win the game, which is crazy and awesome for Georgia State. That's kind of the big takeaway. And it's, the off season for Old Dominion, and we'll do, a full retrospect at some point in the off season, as we head into bowl season. But for Old Dominion, it's just like, can we keep on to Colton Joseph? This is the big thing, because I'm certain that he's courting offers. Haynes King, he would do wonders in Georgia Tech's offense with Haynes King, who I think is a senior, right? And so that's the Georgia or Old Dominion perspective is like, you guys, 9-3. This is an excellent season. Definitely exceeded my expectations, but they're still a ways away from the like that James Madison tier from Georgia State. I'm just glad this season's over. I'm just glad, it sucks that we wasted 2 years of Ted Hurst. I hope Brown sticks around. I don't know. It sucks that we didn't discover Jordan Simmons until, 7-8 weeks into the season, because he's been an excellent running back for the Panthers over the past, back half of the year. It's just like, look, if you don't come out and dominate even those non-conference games, I'm not certain what the slate looks like. Obviously, they're going to pull some, like, an SEC game, but if, like, Georgia State's FCS win, if that isn't a 60-0 win, I'm already done with Del McGee. It was a fun idea. I really like the idea of, like, in theory, this guy who has all these Georgia ties is an excellent recruiter. But like Dowell Loggins, we're missing the big thing is, can he be a head coach? Can he win football games?
Right.
And that is just ultimately missing. And then there's been a deafening silence from the administration about it. So we'll see what happens. It's over. Thank God.
Yeah, shockingly, I mean, you talked about Georgia State going up 10-0 on Old Dominion. Shockingly, Colton Joseph, as a passer, at least, turned in maybe his worst performance of his life. He had the lowest passing grade of any quarterback in the Sun Belt that took over 10 snaps this week. He was 17 out of 17. There are only 14 Sun Belt teams. He was 9 of 22 for 106 yards and an interception. His yards per attempt was 4.8, but his ADOT was 13.4. So at least I guess he was trying some shots, but they just weren't hitting. Or maybe, like you said, maybe he potentially has started, putting his eye out for some other bigger schools to say, like, hey, we're out here, if you really are, like, looking to take a step up in competition or something, like, let us know. But I don't know, this was a weird performance by Old Dominion just as a team, reminiscent of the JMU Georgia State game, where it was just a really good team just sleepwalks their way through, like, a bad 1-11 Georgia State team that's winless in the Sun Belt.
Winless in the FBS, mind you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You mentioned it, Devin Roche, 21 carries, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played well, but outside of that, and defensively, obviously Old Dominion stepped up, but defensively, how much do you have to step up against Christian Valaire? Let's be honest. Valaire, completed less than half of his passes as per tradition. I don't know if that's, like, required in his NIL agreement, that he never completes more than 50% of his passes, but it always seems to be the case. 154 yards on a score in a game they lost by 17 points. Yeah, don't smile because it happened, cry because it's over, I guess. Georgia State.
We'll see you next year, man. That's all there really is. We'll see what parts stick around. Again, I think the two best, from a production perspective, the two best offensive players, and Jordan Simmons and Ted Hurst, just simply are not allowed to play college football anymore. Our quarterback, again, I would be surprised if there's not another G5 team that can win, that can send him to a bowl game, right? And then, with the pretense of, hey, you can parlay this into then your Power 5, Power 4, whatever career with Purdue or wherever you want to end up. But
even still, imagine, I wouldn't be shocked if another Sunbelt school came and scooped him up. And, let's say Braylon Braxton's out of eligibility. Let's say Charles Huff gives him a call and goes, hey, man, you enter the portal, you're Southern Miss's starting quarterback day 1, 2026. You want to come play here, or you want to stay in Atlanta?
Well, who runs a team that also needs a real dual threat is Old Dominion. I think if we're looking at very, very hypothetical ideas, should Colton Joseph get courted away?
We don't know how they feel about Quinn Henicle. He has played somewhat in relief of Joseph. I don't know how high they are on him. I would assume that he would be next up in starting.
Sure.
I would imagine they would feel like they already have kind of a succession plan in place. But I'm talking about teams that it feels like, okay, our guy's gone, and what the hell do we do
Mhm.
now? So yeah, he may have options on the table. I feel like if I was a head coach in the Sun Belt and I desperately needed a quarterback, I would be like, yeah, man, bring yourself over here, and we'll do some stuff. But how long are you going to stick around if McGee is already dead in the water heading into
Mhm.
26, and this is just going to be like a lame duck season? Why stick around when you could place even somewhere else in the Sun Belt and be semi-competitive? I don't know. All right. This next one here was actually really, we had 2 games in a row that were really exciting. So
Mhm.
Arkansas State comes back. They drive down the field with like a minute to go. Jalen Rayner hits some big throws to, I think it was Fortenberry and Corey Rucker that take them basically all the way down the field with like a minute left. And then Kenyon Clay cashes in a game-winning touchdown run with what, 42 seconds to go. They went
Mhm.
75 plays in less than or 75 yards, 7 plays in less than a minute, which you talked about the Thursday night Louisiana loss that Arkansas State had. This makes that look even worse because you went 75 yards in 7 plays, and then you struggled to run more than 4 plays in a loss on the goal line to Louisiana. Um,
Mhm.
Butch Jones continues to keep his head barely above water. He's just Clay Helton West. Uh, and, he better thank his lucky stars every day that Jalen Rayner stuck around for as long as he did. Because that's another guy I wouldn't be shocked if he was just like, hey, man, if you're not going to build around me and like give me anything to actually win with,
Mhm.
why are we even wasting our time?
Yeah, and that's on the defensive side because they've got the weapons. Obviously, Jaquez Cross, that was kind of a late scratch, but there was plans to have an elite running back, and then Corey Rucker just kind of disappeared this year. So it's on the defensive side that they've not been supporting him, but that's kind of been the case the whole time. So what's
They
up?
found a pass rush, but don't have anything else outside of the front four.
Mhm. This game comes down to a missed field goal that had the distance but falls just wide right. Um, so Arkansas State, I mean, and mind you, this game was a bowl eligibility game. Winner goes to a bowl game. Um, Two middling teams with probably similar futures. I think Arkansas State has a bit more going for it in terms of an established head coach. Again, I've not by any means been shy about how low I am on Butch Jones, but there's at least a guy who's been there who has a vision. The vision is scoring 40 points a game and allowing 35, but there
Mhm.
is a vision compared to App State, which I don't know, a very uninspiring first year from Dowell Loggins.
Messy. Like
Messy.
a lot of stuff on the field and off the field that don't make a lick of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from the vibes that I have gotten from him, he kind of thinks he walks on water and shouldn't be questioned
Mm.
under any circumstances because he has this NFL background as an offensive coordinator, not a successful offensive coordinator in the NFL, just an offensive coordinator in the NFL. Made the wrong decision a lot of times with starting the wrong quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Played AJ Swan way more than he should have. Had JJ Cole like kind of languishing on the bench. He was good in this one. Threw for 271 and 2 touchdowns. Picked the wrong running back. Had Rashad Dubinion playing too much. Jakari Lewis played well in this one. 22 carries for 108. Basically anything you could think of to screw up a college football season, he did it. He had his son on the sideline for a 48-point blowout loss. Like I said, was picking the wrong players, like all of
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff. Man, this was a messy first season. I think a lot of App State fans are already kind of out on him. I think the worst thing that could happen to them long term, if they really are kind of done with him already, is that he comes out and wins 7 games next year and he gets a year 3, which is the uh Who did that? I can't remember. There was a coach that did that, and we were like, oh, it was Elliott, Sean
Yeah.
Elliott. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
and Sean
What I
Clark.
would
It was like,
kill for those 6-6 years, though, man. What I would do to have him back.
well, we said that they were like, if you're not going to compete and you're not going to be really bad to the point where you fire the guy, the worst thing you can do is barely squeak into a bowl game, because all the AD is going to look at as, hey, we're in a bowl game, like we've never been here before, or we've been here very little. And App is kind of the same thing, but with a little bit of a higher standard. They had Sean Clark winning some weak East divisions there and was getting into the Sun Belt title game, and then would just get his absolute doors blown off by like Louisiana and stuff. But it's yeah, next year either needs to be like a significant rise. You need to see like probably 7-8 wins. The worst thing that can happen is you're 5-6 again going into week 14, and you win week 14, and then the AD just looks at it and goes, "Oh, well, we made a bowl game. We finished 6-6. Like, good enough for me. Here's a rubber stamp for year 3."
I mean, that's kind of the spot Arkansas State has been sitting in for the past several years as well, is where like Butch Jones is winning 6-7 games a year, and it's like, awesome. Is this our ceiling? I mean, Arkansas State, unlike App, hasn't been flirting with the conference championship games. Has not been, not since Blake Anderson. So,
yeah. I don't know when they're gonna. I basically, after the season after Jalen Rayner leaves, I would like to go ahead and put in a bet on Butch Jones' first coach fired.
I've been saying that for the past 3 years, though.
I know. No, but I'm saying Jalen Rayner is the life raft that's keeping his head above water. And once that's done, again, Rayner played excellent in this game. 363, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Like I said, drove them 75 yards in like less than a minute at the end of the game here, just kind of showing what he can do. The second he leaves, whether it be via I'm out of eligibility or I'm transferring elsewhere, I'll go ahead and throw like $50 on the first Sunbelt coach fired, Butch Jones, because we saw before Rayner what those quarterback rooms look like, and they were not pretty to watch. So he's kind of in the Tim Beck mold of like, you have a guy for a little bit, and you better hope it lasts a long time and that you're able to build off of it, because if not, you're back to square one, buddy. The second this guy leaves is kind of where I'm at with him. So yeah, it really does suck that both, because they're so similar. Georgia Southern and Arkansas State both had these guys win 8 games last year, and the ADs were just they had stars in their eyes, and we're like, oh my gosh, you won 8 games. You got to be the best coach I've ever seen. And then they get these extensions and they just mail in the next season. But it is what it is, I guess.
That's where we are. Yeah.
Yep. So Arkansas State is going bowling, and App State is going to go back to the drawing board for 26 and see what's going on. Another interesting, fun game here was Louisiana going to overtime against ULM. Aiden Armenta played the game of his life. Unfortunately, it didn't ultimately matter. He threw for 311 and 3 touchdowns. Bill Davis finally showed up, and again, we do not knock the running backs for Louisiana because we think they have talent, but the offensive line has been so bad this year that they just haven't had room to run. He had 15 carries for 126 and a score. Lunch Winfield did almost nothing passing wise, threw for 82 yards on 10 completions. Yeah, it was just this is kind of how Louisiana wins these games. A lot of times it's like you look at the numbers and go, wait a minute, how did they score 34 points? And then it's just you don't think about it. Like just move on and be like, Louisiana won. That's all we have to care about. They're going to a bowl game.
This game was lost, maybe not lost, but certainly not helped by a guy who we've given a break. I think Bryant Vincent, because Vincent does the same thing Darryl Loggins does, in that he is the head coach and offensive coordinator, and there's not really a guy behind him in that room. In overtime, on the goal line, when your quarterback, who, mind you, is having the best game of his career, a guy who has a more touchdowns than interceptions for the first time since September, is throwing for a career high yardage. On the goal line, you're at like the 9-yard line, you pull out Taysom Hill and let him throw an interception. And then against your rival in a game that means a lot to a lot of people, in a game that for ULM doesn't change a ton. 3-9 versus 4-8 is not a huge needle mover. I thought that was complete malpractice. I get that you want to have your Philly moment, but this is not that. This is running out of like the pistol with 4 guys in the backfield, doing like a fake handoff, letting again what is ultimately a tight end that plays quarterback throw a lob to the corner of the end zone for him to get mossed by a Louisiana defensive back. Dude, that blew my mind to see Hunter Herring come out, and I think is really, really unexcusable.
Yeah, you can't do that. I don't know, man. I will say a little bit is on Herring, where you have to know in that spot, like, if I don't have it, just throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
You at least need to get 3 out of this possession to like keep us alive somewhat. Like, if we get 3 and Louisiana gets the ball after, then they can kick a field goal. We're on to second overtime, but to throw a pick in that situation is kind of unforgivable. I know it was a good play by the Louisiana defender, but man, if I'm Herring, I'm throwing the ball in only a spot where my guy can get it, or he's going to have to make the, what was it? The immaculate reception with what's his name? The 49ers receiver. So I'm just like, yeah, I need to, you got to go back to the drawing board if you're Brian Vincent and find some new goal line sets to run, because like you said, it's like, if Arminta is throwing for 311 and 3 scores, you got a receiver in Trujillo with 4 catches for 133 and 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. What are we doing running the Taysom Hill package on the goal line and letting him throw a fade?
Mm-hmm. And it's like, if this was a game like, I'm going back through their games, like South Alabama, right? Or, I mean, really just any other Aiden Armenta game this year, where he limps through the game on like 54% and he's throwing for 170 yards with a touchdown and a pick. I think there's some merit. There's some merit. But do you not feed the hot hand? That's like letting Klay Thompson hit 11 threes in a quarter and saying, "Hey man, you want to take the third quarter off?"
You should give Draymond more offensive touches. That's what we really need.
Oh, goodness. Bryant Vincent doing the same thing, Dowell Loggins, and he's gone pretty untouched by us for that, and no longer.
This was a stupid call for sure, but I just feel like they are in a rare spot at ULM that is not really comparable to anybody else in the conference as far as like lack of funding and resources. I think if you took Bryant Vincent and you dropped him onto, I think if you made him Coastal's head coach, they'd be a respectable team overnight. Now, the goal line sets might leave a lot to be desired, but maybe he doesn't have a Taysom Hill player at Coastal to run those sets with. But I just feel like the reason I give him a pass is like, go ahead and name me successful coaches in the history of ULM football.
Yeah.
It just seems like a graveyard where it's like, you need to have the ultimate scheme advantage because you will not have the talent advantage no matter what. So, and I think his scheme is good, but it's not. You have to at least have a quarterback that kind of scares the other team, and that he hasn't. Arminta up until Saturday has not done that ever, really. So he's kind of been fighting with one hand tied behind his back a little bit. Good win for Louisiana though. Lunch is still an iffy passer. Some games he comes out and he's throwing bombs and it looks great, and then other games he can't crack 90 yards passing. But that team is also kind of a mess where it's like everything starts up front at the offensive line, and it all just sort of trickles downhill after a while. So I don't know how much you can put on him versus the rest of the team, especially the line.
Well, look, if you want Billy Napier back, as we've been saying for several weeks, in any capacity, consultant, do whatever Hugh Jackson was doing last year, he's available.
Right. Let Napier come back and be an analyst for $100,000 and secretly be your head coach, or whatever. Next game here, Texas State ends their Sun Belt regular season tenure with a 49-26 win over lowly South Alabama. Brad Jackson once again went crazy in this one and accounted for 5 touchdowns, 280 yards passing and 2 touchdowns through the air, 113 and 3 scores on the ground. They have found themselves like a really nice quarterback, and this is probably the biggest backhanded compliment I've given. GJ Kinney's not going anywhere because of how this season has gone. And probably neither is Brad Jackson. So you're going to the Pac-12. You may have a little bit of optimism with that, because early it was like GJ Kinney's being looked at by Oklahoma State and some of these other coaches. And now it's like the musical chairs is almost done for the jobs that they would potentially go to. And now you're just sort of looking around and it's like, GJ Kinney's not going anywhere. Is anybody going to hire a guy that didn't win a Sun Belt game till like late October, early November? Probably not.
Yeah. I think Brad Jackson is not getting the even attention from us, but I would say national attention that he deserves, because he's putting up performances a la Colton Joseph. Obviously, even though their numbers are relatively similar, they do it in different ways. With Old Dominion doing like a very quarterback design run, whereas Jackson is very mobile, plays out of structure well. And when they do call plays for him, it's a little different schematically, but he's been absolutely incredible. I think he has to win Conference Newcomer of the Year, which last year was won by Braxton. I can't really fathom a guy who's had a better year, because Brad Jackson, frankly, if Braylon Braxton and Colton Joseph, I think he would be the offensive player of the year, or the player of the year. I don't know how they split, because I know they split quarterbacks away in one of the two. But I think if not for, we're talking 2 of the best quarterbacks this conference has seen since like Grayson McCall,
Jordan McLeod.
Jordan McLeod only last year. So yeah, I think.
Well, no, I was talking more about the JMU 2023 season.
Yeah. Before he went over,
he was a lot better at JMU than he was at Texas State.
Oh, certainly. I think this sets. I liked your point about how this season just kind of ultimately finished for the Bobcats. Kinney's probably not going anywhere. Jackson may not go anywhere. I would hope not for their sake. That sets you up pretty well, though, for the next couple of years, because remember, Brad Jackson, very, very young. I believe a freshman, possibly a true freshman.
I think he's a redshirt freshman this year.
Yeah, I mean, either way, he's got 3 more years, and it's like, if obviously the difficulty GJ Kinney has had is the same one as Butch Jones. It's like, guy can't put a defense around him. But they're in a better spot than, we kind of thought they were going to be, especially after those first couple weeks of Sunbelt play.
And they kind of beat up on the worst of the conference right at the end of the season. So I'm a little more hesitant to get, like, they weren't even beating mid-tier teams like Louisiana, Troy. I guess you could say Troy is not, but what I'm talking about. Like, these teams were not anything really like super, super special, and they just like couldn't do defensively. They were awful. I know they beat Southern Miss, but that was the week that Braxton was out. Southern Miss has also kind of cratered the last 3 weeks, and I don't really know what happened there. I want to ask you this, and I kind of am joking, and I'm kind of not. I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat for a moment. You mentioned Brad Jackson potentially winning conference newcomer of the year. Is there any chance that the Sun Belt looks at this school that's outgoing to the Pac-12 and goes, "We're not giving these guys any major awards on the way out the door"?
I don't know. I think it depends on how the awards are done, right? I know some of them are done by the coaches, some of them are done by kind of the conference. So like if it's the other coaches, I don't think they care. I mean they're ball guys. I'm not maybe. I guess it depends. Like
it'd be weird to be like, all right, we're gonna etch the name on this trophy or whatever and we'll never see this team play in this conference ever again, or probably never play another team in this conference because realistically, like how many times do you think Texas State are going to schedule a Sun Belt team in the near future? They probably think they're, looking their noses down on everybody now. They're like, well, we're in the Pac-12. We can't schedule
the high rollers of Colorado State and Oregon State. I don't know. That'd be interesting. I think that's an interesting point. I don't know who else. I don't know who qualifies because I don't know if it's a transfer thing or if it's just your first time playing. So we'll find out, but who knows, man? Maybe crazier things have happened.
Getting to this next game here, this was the West decider. Troy beat Southern Miss 28-18. Credit to Troy. I thought Southern Miss was going to bounce back in this one, and they didn't. Braxton, the PFF grade doesn't reflect it. I thought he was terrible for about 2.5, 3 quarters. He was just straight up like not getting it done. I don't really know what his deal is if he's not all the way fully healthy from whatever his injury was yet. But it was like he threw for 400 yards last week. Like why are we getting these bad performances? I think early, going down 14-3 at half, he basically like lost the game for him because you come into this game knowing you don't have a running game. Typically neither team does, but you come into this game knowing as Southern Miss, like Braxton's going to have to win us this game. They did nothing for like a long time offensively. And then they tried to make this like furious comeback at the end, and Crowder played well, 24 of 34 for 285 and 3 scores. Meadows went over 80 yards for the first time against a Sun Belt or FBS opponent this season, which is an insane stat. That he ran for 94 yards and a score. Ra Thomas, 5 catches, 118 and 2 scores. Troy stepped up in this one. Like I said, I just thought Braxton was absolutely like out of character, terrible for a lot of this game.
I am hesitant to put all of it on him because in the midseason, we spend a long time in one of our episodes talking about how Charles Huff, for whatever reason, historically can't get it done in the red zone.
Right.
And had kind of avoided a lot of that this year. Southern Miss has been by no means world beating, but average, what you expect out of a good team in the red zone. There are 2 decisions that Charles Huff made or whoever on his staff made, I think ultimately costs Southern Miss the game. First quarter, it is 0-0, 4th and goal from the 8. You line up for a field goal. It ultimately gets missed. I'm not mad that obviously you got to hit that. That's about as a gimme as you can get, a 20-yarder. But I'm not mad about that because the kicker shouldn't have been on the field. I really don't think so. Yeah. Because wouldn't you know, come down into the 4th quarter, you're down 10 points with, let's see,
I think
26, less than 30 seconds left in the game. Same thing. From the 4th and 4 on the 28, I think you go for it there. I understand, but like that's a tough field goal from the 28. That's a 46-yarder. That's a tough kick for a college kicker to make, especially a guy who missed a chippy earlier in the game. Because I don't know. I think those are 2 incredibly conservative decisions there by Charles Huff that I absolutely hated. I hated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, Braxton was bad. I mean, this was the game that I had my eyes on for most of the day because this decided who gets to get whooped by James Madison. And we'll talk more about that later in the week, but I think that's malpractice, much like with the Bryant Vincent thing. Like that's a non-starter for me. And then obviously it comes back to the running game, the inability to run the ball. Your leading rusher is Robert Briggs, 6 for 30. Robert Briggs, by the way, like I don't know, man. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating because this and I go back and forth because I saw I don't know who it was from, but it was a tweet about Southern Miss season, and it's like, think about where Southern Miss was last year and under Will Hall, and the fact that
Are
you
you
can
talking about what I said last week on the podcast, or you saw another tweet that also said this?
I totally forgot. If you said the same sentiment, I'd already forgotten it. Where it's like, but it's like, man, I don't know if you get to just say, well, this is good enough because of how poor we've been in the past. And I keep going back and forth on it.
Well,
3 losses. Go
I
on.
mean, I was of the opinion. I even said this like last week. I gave that whole thing about like, look at where you started, look at where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excusing them blowing these last 2 games in like embarrassing fashion. I mean, they lost to South Alabama. They had no business losing that game.
Mm-hmm.
Then you come out, you know what you have to play for against Troy. I think it's 2 things. A, Braxton didn't play well, and he may still be suffering from his shoulder, I think is what was wrong going into that Texas State game. He may still be suffering from that injury that may be impacting his play. I don't know. I think some of the onus needs to be on Charles Huff and the recruiting or lack of transfer portal production that he got from the running back spot this year, because he came from Penn State to Marshall. He was a running backs coach. He was supposed to be a running backs guy who coached Saquon Barkley, which was his big like not claim to fame, but that was his big like calling card, was like, I coached Saquon Barkley at Penn State. To not be able to get a passable running back this season has killed Southern Miss's chances, I think, because it puts so much pressure. Again, Braxton was not good in this game, so I'm not letting him off the hook, but it puts so much pressure on him to make every single play. And now that the defense is also cratering late in the season against Texas State, South Alabama, and now Troy, and giving up at least 28 points or more in each of those 3 games when it really mattered and got to be about crunch time. This was kind of a team effort failure, I feel like. This was not just on one person.
Sure. Yeah. Something I want to point to, and to your point about running backs, there are 3 leading rushers from running backs this year: Jeffrey Pittman, Matt Jones, Robert Briggs. This is just to quantify what you said. All 3 were transfers: Pittman from Miss State, Jones from Ole Miss, and then Robert Briggs from Utah State. We're looking at 2 guys there transferring in from SEC programs. They were middling at best. Pittman ran for 268 last year. Jones 226. Yeah, that's a talent identification problem that it seems like is plaguing the entire conference. And it makes you look at the previous like Marshall's performances last year and the years where we're boasting Rasheen Ali's and we're boasting guys who are now, flirting with NFL practice squads, which, isn't the world's highest bar, but for this level, that's a huge bar.
Kalen Laybourne, another guy that was like lost to the sands of time, played one season that Ali was out most of the year and ran for like 1,200 yards or something like that. Like that was nuts. The fact that AJ Turner last year was good for Marshall and it was sort of that Jahmyr Gibbs like home run hitting type of running back that they had. The fact that they just couldn't ever get a running game off the ground without basically Braylon Braxton's legs being the running game as well is like, we've called out teams for that before. Arkansas State after Jaquez Cross went down, couldn't do it. Old Dominion has had moments where it was like some weeks Devin Roche shows up, but also some weeks he doesn't, and he runs for like 52 yards. We talked about it with App. Dubinion has been kind of a bust coming over from Arkansas. The fact that you couldn't identify a running back that actually made a difference and get that guy into the program as the reigning Sunbelt winning coach and quarterback combo, that's got to fall right at Huff's feet, because he's supposed to be that guy as a running backs coach.
Yeah, that's the point that we've been making over the past several weeks as we've really been able to reflect, is that this is a team that has that very obvious Marshall lacquer on top of it all. But there's still some glaring holes. Is that an issue? I don't know yet, because this is only year one, right? I don't expect the guy to revitalize the entire program, which was bottom worst in the conference for several years in a row. A team that did not have a quarterback. You could have summed up the past 3 years of Southern Miss quarterbacks, and their yardage totals weren't going to equate what Braylon Braxton has done in this year alone. So I don't know if that's necessarily a failure, but it's obvious now, and that lacquer is really cracking as Braxton deals with his injury, and as other parts of that team get exposed. I think Charles Huff is going to have a time next year. I think it's going to be very revealing about the nature of this program, and whether this is what Tim Beck had, and with his 1 year with Grayson McCall. I don't know if this is his Grayson McCall year or not. We'll find out, but
the one thing Tim Beck never had which was a Sun Belt title. Is gonna buy Huff a lot of goodwill, even if they take a step back as a team next year and they win 5-6 games. You're still gonna come back and go, okay, but last year was kind of putting a new coat of paint on a car that has like real engine issues, which it looks great on the surface and it may tide you over for a little bit, but at the end of the day, you go to crank that sucker and you need to get to work on time and the engine doesn't work. And just because you put a cherry red coat of paint on the outside of it doesn't mean the car actually runs. So I think that's going to be something, I don't know if they're going to stick with Landry Liddy as the quarterback successor to Braxton. He played some this year. It's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing. Troy, credit to them, obviously. I had run through on previous episodes a lot of what their wins had been in the Sun Belt, and they weren't overly impressive, but man, they got it done. And it's like, will they probably lose very badly to James Madison? Yes, but this is a big step up for Gerard Parker in the coaching department, from winning 4 games in year one and looking like another Tim Beck DOA head coach, where it was like the second he came in, you were just, this isn't going to work. This system that you're running at Notre Dame with that level of talent is not going to work at Troy when you don't have that same level of talent. And he's found out a way to like make Crowder, Kilcrease, like all these guys in the mix. Again, up until this week, he had a running back starting for him that hadn't run for over 79 yards against an FBS team, and they won 8 games this year. So credit to him, and they stay alive for another week, and they get to face James Madison next Saturday.
Yeah, I hate to play like the what if isms, but it's like, what if this team was if Goose Crowder was healthy all year? Because he's been the real, obviously Southern Miss hitting the wall over the past 3 weeks has been a lynch there, but Goose Crowder, I mean, 70%, that those are types of numbers that we saw briefly from Tucker Kilcrease for like that 2-week stretch in like week 9, week 10 or something. But it's like, shoot, man, even going back to last year when we had this revolving door at quarterback for Troy, it's like, shoot, is Goose the truth?
I think if Goose stays healthy all year, there's only one game that ultimately could be different, and it doesn't really change anything for them as a team. I think they'd be 9-3. It's the Arkansas State game where Kilcrease was so bad. They scored 10 points. I don't remember his numbers in that game, but it was bad. They were like non-competitive bad. I don't think you beat ODU, a game that you lost 33-0. Like a lot of the times they lost, it was so like, yeah, everybody saw this coming and this was going to happen no matter what. In those losses, Memphis, Crowder was healthy for some early in that game. It's the offense still didn't look good against Memphis, so I don't think he ultimately changes the result of that one either. You didn't beat Clemson with Goose Crowder, that doesn't change. There's 3 of your losses right there.
Sure.
But I think the Arkansas State game ultimately could have been decided differently if Crowder stays healthy, but that wouldn't have changed the overall trajectory of this season. I mean, they're in the Sun Belt title game. It's just a matter of whether you be 8-4 or 9-3.
Yeah, I think my point rather is last year. I mean, it was a relatively record-wise poor Troy team with Matthew Caldwell, and then we saw some of Kilcrease. I think Goose's health seems to be a real kind of the factor. I don't know if linchpin is the right word, but like the X factor to this team and its offense. And so assuming he stays there, I can't imagine he has plenty suitors after 2 injured seasons, but I think they're in a really good spot. I think right now they probably give a better fight than Southern Miss would have against James Madison, just the way they're playing with Goose.
Probably. I mean, the running game showed signs of life that it really hadn't all year. Like you said, Goose probably played his best game of the season. I know he had been kind of in and out all year with injury, but yeah, I mean, credit to Troy. Gerard Parker, went out and got it done, and now they're playing for a Sun Belt title next week. So again, credit to them. Last game of the night, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. James Madison beats Coastal 59-10. Again, another Tad Hudson masterclass. Okay, now Tad Hudson's uncle can click out of the video. Alonzo Barnett chopped them up 207 and 3 touchdowns. Joby Mallory, 12 carries, 154 and a score. Coastal was DOA. They were down 17-0 after the first quarter. They did score a touchdown in the second quarter, and then that was pretty much it for the rest of the game. James Madison just put them through a wood chipper, and you see now Tim Beck is looking for work elsewhere, and Coastal, even though they're making a bowl game, is moving on and trying to find something else to do with the coaching spot.
Yeah, Coastal. What's really going to come to play in the conference championship game is just going to be how utterly dominant James Madison's defense is, especially on the ground. I mean, no matter what team it was, Southern Miss or Troy, both of those teams struggled to get those things moving anyway. And in this game, Coastal, 22 carries for -5 yards. And, that includes the sack yardage, of which James Madison had only 2. Let's take Tad Hudson and Bryson Graves out of the equation. You're still looking at 15 carries for 10 yards as a team. So keep up the great work there. Yeah, I think this is obviously this is kind of an unfair end to Tim Beck's career. I think he deserved to be fired. This was a worthy time to end it, but I don't think a 59-10 loss is necessarily reflective of his time. Remember again that they're missing their real best quarterback in Samari Collier, and they're playing what, again, I guess the committee is hesitant to name, but really should be the G5 rep in the college football playoffs.
I'm interested to see. I don't know if they've announced anything. So Summerall from Tulane is going to Florida, which I think is a little rich considering how they got on Billy Napier's butt for being Sunbelt Billy. And it's like, do you guys understand that 3 seasons ago Summerall was at Troy? Like, I don't think they realize that. I think they just see Tulane and their eyes like glaze over. It's like, would things have changed if he had stopped in at Tulane for 2 seasons? Like, do you think that changes who he is as a coach? Probably not. But I'd be interested. So I don't know if they make it if Tulane is ultimately the G5 rep for the playoff, and this field opens up a lot more if Duke beats Virginia, because there's a real chance the ACC doesn't have a rep in the playoff at all. I'd be interested to see if Summerall leaves Tulane. Are they going to do what the committee did to Florida State that year, where their quarterback got hurt and they were like, "Get him out of here, like put somebody else in"?
I think, I mean, we're going to see the same thing play out with Ole Miss too. Like, there's a world, especially if Ole Miss loses to Georgia in the SEC championship, where they're just like, and it's not fair. It's not fair, but they just say,
Alabama's in the SEC championship game.
Oh, that's so right. That's so right.
Ole Miss had to have Alabama lose to Auburn.
That's right. That's right. And Auburn gave them a fight.
Ole Miss is like what, a one-loss team? Like, they should be in the playoff regardless.
They should be, but I'm sorry, excuse me, but yeah, I mean, we're about to find even more. If you thought the 4-team playoff was inconsistent, they have just tripled the opportunity to just pull stuff out of their ass.
Right.
Looking forward to it. What a time.
Notre Dame is going to be a 2 seed in the playoff because they don't have to play a conference championship game.
Well, goodness. It's just awesome, dude. It's just awesome. It's so cool how it's all set up and how it doesn't matter what you do or how you play. And it's just like,
it's brand recognition almost.
It's splendid. It's awesome. I love it.
I mean, keep in mind, there were arguments last year that we should keep Indiana out of the playoff when they were like 11-1. And it was like, wait, what are we talking about? Are we putting the best teams in, or are we just looking at like, man, it'd be so cool if Oregon was in instead, or whatever team it was that didn't get in? And it's like, but when do the on-field results actually matter? Or are we just saying like, let's pull up rivals and go through the number of 5 stars and make our decision that way?
Really, the only on-field results are those early season non-conference P4 versus G6 games where you can say, look, guys, the Sun Belt doesn't deserve this playoff spot because Texas beat down on Texas State or whoever it was they had in the early season. Right.
Yeah.
What a great world. What a mess.
Yeah, we're gonna knock Texas for losing to Ohio State in week 1 of the season. They shouldn't have played that. They should have played the Citadel instead and just collected a free win. All right, so you can email the show, warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can follow us on X or TikTok @warmweatherfans. You can catch me on X @watchthestone. Zeke, let them know where they can find you on socials, but also let them know what we are cooking up for our Sunbelt preview coming out on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Twitter @Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo. That's the boring part. The exciting part is that you don't have to hear us yap about the conference championship game. In Thursday's episode, we're bringing in experts on James Madison and Troy. One we've already had on the show, Jack Fitzpatrick, but then we get a real Troy expert in Barry McKnight, who's Troy's radio play-by-play guy. And we're going to hear their thoughts on their teams as we head into the conference championship game. It's going to be really exciting. It's those conversations have gone really, really well, and we're just really looking forward to being able to share that with you guys because I don't know. Brian and I talk a lot about, we probably spend an inequitable time talking about the Georgia teams, especially considering the disarray both of those teams are in. So we're really excited to have some real experts about those teams give their insights to, what we anticipate to be a pretty one-sided whooping, but Troy's pulled some pretty good results in the past couple of weeks. They've got some mojo going on.
Absolutely. So stay tuned with us. We will be back on Thursday with talks with Barry and Jack. This has been Warm Weather Fans.